Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And Wargaming just announced that they will be making some tests to change the matchmaking in World of Tanks, which will almost effectively become matchmaking 2.0 with the scale of what Wargaming have planned. In today's video, I'm going to discuss exactly what you have to do to be able to participate in this test, what Wargaming are going to be testing, and my enjoyments of their changes and my massive concerns of their changes as well. So firstly, Wargaming talk about how for the past 15 years they've been evolving the matchmaker, and the current approach hasn't brought the progress that they aim for. Their goals for the matchmaker are to create balanced battles, engagement and battle variety, and speed and efficiency of the matchmaker, and that they are considering completely rebuilding the matchmaker from the ground up, but it's an incredibly tough task, as even small adjustments to the matchmaker cause big issues and they have to spend a long time being able to test them. So what are Wargaming planning? Well, firstly, improved role balancing. So what this means is that they want to try and match super heavies against super heavies and autoloaders against autoloaders. So that's interesting because, unless I'm mistaken, many years ago, they already implemented this into the matchmaker. I believe that kind of Kranvangs had to fight against 50Bs and T57 heavies and so on and so forth. But maybe they didn't quite make those changes completely, or maybe they've been removed since the matchmaker since then. But this is not a new idea. That is for certain. But I guess what they're going to be planning is to force this even more. So they give a very simple example.
Previous matchmaker, Team 1 Mousy 100, Team 2 50B T57 Heavy. To second matchmaker, Mouse versus E100, 50B versus T57 Heavy.
Pretty simple example there. I think it would have been better if they definitely fleshed that out a little bit more, but if they want to try and make this as simple as possible for the community, well, good job, Wargaming. So for this, it's definitely going to result in more same kind of matchups and more balanced kind of matchups, if you think about it like that. But it's definitely going to remove some of those funky games where, you know, maybe you've got the 3 E100s and the enemy team have the 3 IS7s. In an ideal world, you'd think that the team that had the super heavies would just play differently and try and hope that the IS7s are going to assault one flank, maybe catch them or bait them into a trap, or maybe wait until they've got themselves into an awkward position under fire and then assault with your extra hit points and armor that you'd have with the German tanks. However, that would require coordination, and for teams to have coordination in World of Tanks, that might be an even more tricky task for everyone to organize than Wargaming trying to fix the matchmaker, which they've made very clear is an incredibly tricky thing to be able to fix, right? So, all in all, I don't have a problem with this. If they want to do it, fine. My question is will this make you wait until another Mouse or an E100 signs up, or will this kind of take the group of players that are already made into the teams and then just try and balance the teams together? And this is significant because if Wargaming make it so you have to wait in the queue like an EBR does for another EBR of an equal tier to sign up, that could significantly add to the time that we spend waiting. And that's one of Wargaming's key goals: speed and efficiency, minimizing queue times. I'm pretty sure Wargaming will take the approach of just balancing out the teams that have already been created, because that'll be much less pressure on the matchmaker, I believe. Although it will effectively still have to have like a second process after a group of 30 players have been formed to then be able to balance them out. But that should be way easier than forcing people to wait to be able to play their tanks. Especially, how far do Wargaming go with this? Is it going to be kind of like super heavies? Or let's talk about auto-loading heavies at tier 10, for example. Is it going to be that the 50B can only get matched up against the 50B and the T57 heavy? Because when you think about it, the VZ55 is a completely different animal. That vehicle, compared to like a 50B or a T57 heavy, is so well armored. And when you also consider the Rinoceronte and the Kranvang, it's like, how far do Wargaming go with separating these different classes? That's going to just have to be a question that they answer. So all in all, it's going to remove a lot of the funkiness to the Matchmaker and the variety, which is one of Wargaming's big points, battle variety. So they're removing that for sure. And we'll have to see how much this is going to add to the queue. But undoubtedly, it will present a more balanced battle. Next, let's talk about better class diversity. So Wargaming going to introduce stricter limits, ensuring a maximum of 5 tank destroyers and 3 light tanks per team. Okay, so immediately there's no mention of artillery here. That is a hot topic. Currently, I think artillery is limited to 3. Is that like a really healthy position to have? No, I'd say 3 artillery is a little bit too much. But the problem is that if you reduce the amount of artillery, the maximum artillery in the game, to 2, the problem with that is that then you're probably going to have 2 artillery in every single game. Currently, at least for me, and in my subjective opinion, I'd say I get just as many games with 2 artillery as 1 artillery with no artillery. And I think that the amount of times I see 3 artillery, that's rather unusual. So if they just filter off that rather unusual, then that's 3 extra artillery that they have to kind of like feed into the other 2s or 1s or even 0s. So I think the artillery is an okay position. Wargaming have pretty much put it into a bard class right now, where it's kind of like a support and not actually its own kind of damage dealing role. And interestingly as well, when you sign up in artillery, it actually says, oh, you might have to queue for longer. So that is a concern for artillery players, but not for everyone who hates artillery, right? So I don't think artillery needs to be punished at all from the Matchmaker system. And honestly, I think artillery needs a little bit of a buff inside World of Tanks. Maybe just get rid of the stun and make them do damage again like they used to. But I digress. That'll be a whole extra video. So let's talk about, well, with that caveat in mind that Wargaming haven't mentioned our artillery here, let's talk about 5 tank destroyers. I think this will be a good change. Obviously, it's going to remove a lot of the fun that you can have when you're playing a light tank or a medium tank where there's 6 or 7 or 8 tank destroyers. You know, when you get onto that magical spotting map where you can be able to just really light up and then suddenly there's 8 big guns just blazing for you. It can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun. And it undoubtedly adds variety and funkiness to the game in those kind of extreme situations. However, I think all of us have seen in the last couple of weeks that when there's that amount of tank destroyers all the time, then it is pretty darn horrendous. But I'd like to highlight that the last 2 weeks has not been a problem that I've noticed before with too many tank destroyers in the queue. And what has caused it? Well, what has caused it is that Wargaming sold more DBV 152s than they've ever sold an assembly shop tank. It has been played 2 million battles in the last couple of weeks. Now, this is something that Wargaming have caused, right? All of the previous assembly shops, there were only 80,000 available on the European server. Only 80,000. There were 40,000 with styles, 40,000 without styles, and Wargaming, for some reason, with the DBV 152, decided to sell 100,000 of them. So that they could go and greedily take an extra 25% currency out of the game, they've done so at the integrity of the Matchmaker the last 2 weeks. And I'd like to question that there must be like a conflict between Wargaming's developers and Wargaming's monetization department within that regard. Because this is obviously not new, right? If they've just come out with this is not something new. They've been planning this for a while. And if they've been planning this for a while, why did they not consider that if tank destroyers can be toxic for the Matchmaker, why did they need to sell 100,000 DBV 152s, a vehicle which is just so comfortable and convenient to play? If we look at all of the most popular tanks, and I'd like to clarify, this is something that I did not really consider until I've seen how popular the DBV 152 is. All of the popular tier 10 tank destroyers, turret, 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 and FV215B183 turret there, and E4 turret there as well. You'd have to question where the Minotaur is right in the middle. So all of these turreted TDs are towards the top, apart from the 114 SP2 and the Phoenix, but those are because very few players actually can get their hands on them because of the extreme costs. So Wargaming must have known tank destroyers, turreted tank destroyers, really popular in the game. let's sell 100k. And it's not down to the fact that there are more people playing World of Tanks now than there was last year or the year before. That's not the case. There are definitely less people playing World of Tanks a year ago. And it's not due to the fact that we had a load of lovely Ukrainians come into the server, because that was 3 years ago, right? And they've had assembly shops since then. So it's kind of interesting in a way. The Wargaming have created this problem 2 weeks ago. Oh, now we're going to fix the Matchmaker. You caused the problem, Wargaming, 2 weeks ago with your poor consideration as to, and greediness with how many DBVs you sold. But now I guess they're coming in like World of Tanks Jesus to be able to solve a problem. And I think it's obviously quite a cynical view. I think it might have just been that Wargaming didn't consider how popular the DBV was going to be. But then again, why did they sell 100,000 if they didn't think that it was going to be popular, right? But I can't help but feel that Wargaming can be quite, they can be quite, how to say this, they can be quite pushing with when they want to make changes to the game to make them seem like they're going to make the experience the best they can possibly be. They really do. HE changes, for example, I don't think they've made the game any better. I think they made the game worse. But they kept throwing out all of these statistics like 80% of people loved this change and so on and so forth. Yet all of the polls that I personally ran, and I ran these polls before I had an opinion on it, they didn't agree. They didn't agree. But yeah, whatever. Wargaming want to have you all happy, and they want you to be happy little sheep to go along with the master plans of changes sometimes. But I digress. Let's focus on now 3 light tanks per battle. I think this is a good change. I think 4 or more light tanks is horrible, toxic for many reasons. Number one, when there's so much vision, it's confusing for players to know what to shoot. Honestly, artillery will struggle, tank destroyers will struggle, and also when there's so many light tanks all over the place, you're not really timing that vision. There's no progression with the vision there, and the light tanks are meant to provide vision that the team expands out into. And also when there's so many light tanks, they're all competing with each other, which is a horrible situation for the light tanks to be in as well. However, I think that 1 light tank is a bad idea. I think 2 or 3 is just the sweet spot. 2 would be absolutely perfect, I think. 1, not good, because it puts so much pressure on that light tank. And while that can be good if the light tank is good on your team, I've had so many frustrating games recently where light tanks, there's been a big disparity. You know, you've got that 45% EBR player on the enemy team versus that 55% sweaty player on the enemy team. And honestly, it just feels like a formality. Just the other day, I had a Tessak with 44% wins on Prokhorovka when there was like 8 tank destroyers either team. Just drive right down the middle of the map, literally at the start, get themselves killed, and then the enemy Manticore got an account spotting record of like 12,000. There was nothing I could do. I was furious, absolutely furious. Because it was right at the end of the evening where I was thinking like, oh yeah, hopefully get a few more wins in and wrap up a good day of World of Tanks. So I think that there needs to be more than 1 light tank. So if a disaster happens, that the game is no longer a formality on those kind of maps. So 2 to 3 is the sweet spot. So I think this is a good change. I think that's a good change. Of course, it's going to limiting the amount of light tanks per battle will have 2 impacts. 1, light tanks will have to queue more, or 2, it means that we're going to have more games with 3 light tanks per battle, because obviously, just like with the artillery argument, that every time that the matchmaker would have made a game with 5 artillery and it's forcing it to 3, that's 2 extra artillery that maybe have to go into that game where there was only light tanks that have to go into that game when there was only 1 light tank. So now it means like every game might have 3. Does that mean that every game is going to feel the same? Issues, right? That kind of beautiful chaos that we had in World of Tanks will be disappearing. But Wargaming say this is going to create more dynamic and tactical battles. Honestly, the amount of tank destroyers quite often slow down the games, which can be a beautiful thing. Dynamic is not a good word, let me tell you, quite often with World of Tanks, because it means faster. Light tanks and tank destroyers slow down the battle. Medium tanks and heavy tanks speed up the battle. So the less tank destroyers and light tanks we have, arguably the more dynamic, aka faster the battles could be. Tactical, I do agree with regards to the tank destroyer limit and the limit of the light tanks. I do agree. I do agree with the tactical, but I don't agree with the dynamic that will make it faster. But in the future, they're going to adjust these limits. Okay, so now let's talk about a big one. More plus or minus 1-tier battles. In the new matchmaker configurations, we'll focus on increasing the frequency of plus 1- battles as a more comfortable option. Okay, however, we're keeping +2, -2 battles as they remain the core format that ensure the full diversity of battles. This means you'll face more balanced matchups while still enjoying a variety and encountering a wide range of vehicles. So, firstly, I'd like to say Wargaming haven't clarified how they're going to achieve that in this statement. They say that they're keeping +2, -2, but they don't say how they're going to increase the frequency of +1, -1. They don't say whether it's less +0, -0, or less +2, -2. So I went to seek clarification, and Wargaming clarified that it's the reduction of +2, -2. So Wargaming, if you're planning on focusing on +0, -0, and +0, -1, just say it here. It's like they're not presenting the actual information because they're afraid of upsetting people that would be able to actually that might enjoy those kind of aspects to their game. And they've got to be upfront because when they take these things away, just like they did with my assault maps over the year by adding random events, it made me more angry at the game than I think I've ever been in a long time. So Wargaming, just be upfront, communicate, say why you're doing these things, and be honest with your planned changes, and don't leave it to people like me to have to dig out this information. So firstly, let's go back to Wargaming's core principles. Battle variety, engagement and battle variety, bringing diverse battle setups. Does this achieve that goal? No, it definitely doesn't. It definitely doesn't achieve this goal. It might create a more balanced battle for the low tier tanks, but it definitely won't create a more fun battle for the higher tier tanks inside that game. Look, there's so many reasons why +2, -2 is great for the game outside of variety. Firstly, I'd hate to say this, but when you're playing a stock tank, you have more chance of winning the battle when you're a bottom tier tank than you do when you're a top tier tank, because the pressure, if you think about it as a pyramid, right? We've got like the lower tier tanks, then you've got the upper tier tanks. The pressure is on those top tier tanks inside the battle. They're the ones that have more of an impact because, you know, they've got more alpha, more hit points, more DPM, more all of these aspects to be able to get through the battle. So when you're in a stock tank, when you're a bottom tier vehicle, you've actually got more chance of winning because there's a chance that your top tier tank could be very powerful. And this is also the case with, how to say this, bad players inside World of Tanks. Bad players inside World of Tanks will win more of their battles when they're bottom tier than when they're top tier because there's less pressure on them. So these loss streaks that a lot of players have that end up being maybe frustrating for them are usually ended when they're kind of like a Tiger 2 against tier 10 tanks, but they had a really powerful tier 10 platoon that kind of carried them a little bit in the battle. Whereas when they're on top in a same tier matchmaking or +1 matchmaking or even +2 matchmaking where the pressure's really on them, then they're not going to perform so well. So, +-2. It not only adds a huge amount of variety, it also creates extreme situations, which can be fun. For everyone out there who is a fierce advocate for +0, -0, or +1, -1, I would be surprised if maybe some of your best games of all time didn't happen from +2, -2. For example, my highest damage game of all time was in the Kampfpanzer at tier 10, the assembly shop Kampfpanzer, where I got near 11,000 damage. And that was in a +2 matchup on Assault, on Siegfried Line Assault. And it makes me think now that if Wargaming's focus isn't going to be on that +2, that might have never happened. And also Siegfried Line Assault, I don't really see it anymore because Wargaming have broken the Assault queue when they added in random events. So there's that issue as well, right? So arguably my best game, at least with regards to damage in World of Tanks, wouldn't really be a possibility now. That's a scary reality. So I think that +2, -2 as well allows very casual players to have those extreme games. Like me, obviously, me casual, and my comp puns are at tier 10. You know, some people aren't wanting to do 10,000 damage. Some people aren't wanting to get 8, 10 kills in a game. Some people want to just go in, get a few good hits, excuse me, and maybe be able to get a couple of kills. And quite often, that can be what keeps the average player enjoying this game. They're rolling the dice when they go in to be able to have that epic game, the way that World of Tanks makes us feel. And quite often that will happen when you're +2, you know? When you're that defender and you've got into a game against tier 6s, that 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 times that you actually get to play against tier 6 tanks as a tier 8, right? And then Dave will go down the pub saying, "Oh, Brian, you should have seen it. Did I just go into an Australian accent then? I can't continue that. Oh, Dave, you should have seen it. No, Brian, you should have seen it. Oh, it was absolutely magical. I went in, I got 3 kills. It was fabulous. Oh, just an absolute exquisite experience, and I'm going to keep playing that game forever." So you get my point. How to say that sure, for every time you get into those +2 games and you feel like the battle is predetermined, your brain focuses on that negative, but it doesn't focus on the positives. It doesn't focus on that amazing battle. One of the reasons why you did well is because you were in +2, right? By losing that, it'll be a little bit sad, because honestly, back in the day, we've gone from +4 to +3 to +2, now where the focus will be on +1. I think this is a big mistake from Wargaming, because one of the reasons why I can play a lot of World of Tanks and why I still enjoy it after all of these years is because it's a little extreme, and you can be playing it all evening and never felt like you get into the same situation. Whereas for me personally, one of the reasons why I hate playing tier 8 is that tier 8 it's the same tier matchmaking at tier 8. It's the same tier matchmaking at tier 8. We can see it on the meta insights here. If Tomato GG is going to load. Come on, Tomato GG. Oh, sorry, it's actually the server stats. I can scroll down and show you here. So this is the 30-day matchmaking of same tier or +2, -2. And we can see at tier 10, you meet tier 8 tanks 10% of the time. Only 1 in 10 games. And you meet tier 9s apparently only 20%, less than 20%, 19%. So, ladies and gents, 7 out of 10 games at tier 10 is now same tier. And 40% of games at tier 8 is same tier. But one of the reasons why I love tier 9, only less than 3% is same tier. I would like to clarify. Everyone loves tier 9 matchmaking. Why do people love tier 9 matchmaking? Well, there's an argument it could be because it's +1, -2, right? Although, how much do they actually get +2? Only 5% of the time. So I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason why tier 9 feels so amazing is because you're still playing big boy tanks, high tier tanks, but there's variety. Sometimes tier 10, sometimes tier 8, very, very rarely, 5% of the time, tier 7. I think that is what feels amazing inside the game. And I think that Wargaming have a huge problem brewing with how their game is going to feel with this +1, -1 focus. I think it's a big mistake. I think Wargaming's focus should be on removing the +0, -0. I would rather wait for a while so that my tier 8 tanks are either playing against 9s or 7s, or like 9s and 7s where I'm in the middle, but that would be +2, right? That's the +2 for the 7s. I would rather wait for a little bit longer to get that than to lose this +2, -2, because that's why tier 9 for me is so fun. It's because you get so little same tier matchmaking. And let me clarify, this same tier matchmaking at tier 9 is creeping up and up and up and up the more of the tier 9 premiums that Wargaming put inside the game. And then very soon tier 9 would feel like tier 8, which feels awful, and feel like tier 10 as well. So I think Wargaming's focus for the +1, -1, which is fine, should come at the reduction of +0, -0. I don't think it should come at the reduction of +2, -2, because I think variety in World of Tanks is what makes the game feel great and why Tier 9 feels so special, and why I'm incredibly worried about the focus on +1, -1 at the reduction of +2, -2, and I would think it would be a great change if they focused on +1, -1 at the reduction of +0, -0. So this change for me, it's interesting, because if we go back and look at Wargaming's goals, balanced battles, well, undoubtedly it'll be more balanced. Well, but why not stop there? Why not go +0, -0? Why not make it so that the matchmaker waits until there's 15 E100s versus 15 E100s, you know? Where is the sweet spot of variety? Where is the sweet spot of balanced battles, right? So Wargaming definitely succeed with balanced battles. They massively fail with regards to battle variety there with what they're planning. And they're also going to fail with speed and efficiency, because the more that they get the matchmaker to put these constraints on, the longer it's going to create queue times. That is undoubtable. Next, let's talk about the next one, smarter vehicle distribution. So highly popular tanks often flood the queue, leading to battles where both teams are packed with the same vehicle. While this can be fun in some cases, it can also reduce variety. I agree. The new matchmaker will limit the number of tanks, identical tanks that is, per team, and distribute them evenly from more varied experience and diverse lineups. Okay, so this will be a good change. I think this will be a good change. The only issue is the only way that Wargaming can achieve this is with longer queue times. There's no doubt. So what this means is that the most popular tanks in the game are undoubtedly going to have longer queue times. So DBV 152, longer queue times, ELC even 90, Borasks, FE405s, XMs, longer queue times. For me, I think this is fine, because it will balance out the popularity of vehicles based on the queue times. If people get bored waiting for 2 minutes to, and let me clarify, I'm just blurting out numbers here. If people get bored waiting for 2 minutes to play their DBV 152 or their ELC even 90, fine. I think that's a necessary evil for the game. And I think that increasing queue times that players can avoid is one thing, but let me clarify, increasing queue times for things that players can't avoid, that's another thing altogether. So I want to make that a very, very clear point, that people who choose to play hyper-popular tanks, queuing for longer is something they can avoid if they play other vehicles. However, increasing the queue time of World of Tanks for a whole class like tank destroyers, that's more dubious. That's more dubious is what I'm suggesting, because tank destroyers are a fifth of all of the vehicles that you're going to have in your garage. So all in all, I think this will be a good change. I like this one. This one gets a big thumbs up from me. I love the variety. And the smarter vehicle distribution will be good. Next up, let's talk about smarter and faster dynamic queue management. So this new system brings dynamic queue management, allowing matchmaking to adjust its rules in real time instead of relying on fixed settings. It will analyze player distribution and vehicle availability, fine-tuning parameters on the fly. The result, if testing confirms that expectations, will achieve consistently high battle quality no matter the time of day. Okay, so this is an interesting statement to me, because no matter the time of the day. So let's break that down a little bit. So when you're queuing at 2 a.m. in the morning on the North American server, local time, your queue time is probably going to be very different to when you're queuing at prime time, say like 7 o'clock in the evening. And the reason for this is because there are less players. So Wargaming could effectively change this statement to saying, if it confirms our expectations, we'll achieve consistently high battle quality no matter how many players are playing. The only way they can do that is to make you queue for longer. That is the only way that they can be able to achieve that, unless I'm wrong. They can't just magic players out of a hat unless they're going to fill bots into more matchmaking at the lower tiers. So the only way that I can consider that this statement makes sense for dynamic queue management which dynamic, that's the length. So remember length. So new system brings dynamic queue management. So that's the length that you will queue will be managed. So I do expect that the system will fine-tune the amount of time that you wait depending on the amount of players that are playing. So that, unless there's a hold-up in the matchmaker right now that is preventing quality games from going ahead with very little players who are actually playing sometimes at late night on the Asia server and the NA server, this will be a big concern. It'll be a big concern for me at once again achieving their speed and efficiency goals. It will definitely create balanced battles, but it will do that at the expense of speed and efficiency. So all of these suggestions, Wargaming, some aspects get worse and some aspects get better. So what do I think about that? Again, anything that they can do to improve the matchmaker, sure. But Wargaming, I'd be very concerned, because one of the reasons why a lot of people play your game is because they don't have to queue for long. And you have a lot of competition right now. For example, Marvel Rivals. I did a couple of sponsored Marvel Rivals campaigns on Twitch. Those queue times were, you literally click the button, boom, in, done, dusted. I'm fortunate enough to play mostly at prime time on the European server. I play literally from sometimes 11 a.m. until 11 p.m. I don't have to play deep into the night when the queue times probably get longer. And I don't play on the NA server or the Asia server apart from last September where I was in California. And man, the queue times, they were a lot longer, even though I was playing at local prime time. So Wargaming have to be very careful. They have an issue with queue times already, and this matchmaker might cause some very significant problems on the less popular servers. So let's talk about how they're going to be testing this. So the sheer number of exciting improvements and the complexity of the matchmaking system requires to conduct thorough testing to ensure the quality and effectiveness. Over the next few months, we will carry out a series of tests on the EU1 server, experimenting with different configurations and continuously fine-tuning the settings based on gathered data. Okay, so firstly, Wargaming give no mention as to, will they warn us when this happens? Will they tell us this happens? But interestingly, they give a next statement, which is to ensure the most accurate results, certain game modes, encounter, assault, grand battles will be temporarily disabled on the EU server. However, these modes will remain available on all other servers. During the test, battles with unusual team configurations may appear on the tested server, but this is a necessary step to ensure the proper functioning of the updated matchmaker. Okay, so I have no idea why, to achieve the most accurate results, that they have to remove encounter, assault, and grand battles, two of which are some of the most fun battles in the game. So what this means for me is that I will basically play on the EU2 server. I might go on EU1 occasionally, just to see what it feels like and to see what the queue times feel like. But for me, encounter and assault is mandatory to have inside World of Tanks. It's the assault is the best game mode inside the game. I have my most fun battles on assault, and I think Wargaming should actually continue to develop the assault game mode and to because it's so easy for them. They just take a map that you already have and then place one base here and two starting points here, and then see how people are going to attack. Imagine how fun it would be on the Japanese port map, for example. That would be really funky to see how one team could try and take a cap circle in the center. Would they break up over the hill and then try to like fight in towards the middle? Assault is great because it forces teams to attack, and that creates dynamic gameplay. And while you do get the occasional draw on the assault, and actually, no, you don't get a draw on assault map. What I should say is you do get the occasional situation where a team doesn't attack on assault map, but that feels very seldom for me. I feel like one team, there's always one team that manages to get the victory by the end. And for some reason, for me, I feel like I literally have just as much chance when I'm attacking as when I'm defending. But maybe that's because I'm an active player who knows the maps, who knows how to be able to influence them into my team's favor. So I would like to hear the real reason why Wargaming are disabling encounter and assault, because how can they say that it's to achieve accurate results That makes literally no sense to me. Why would encounter and assault cause inaccurate results? Why do they have to disable it? If it's because it puts too much pressure on the matchmaker, then we need to know it. Then we need to know about that. Otherwise, Wargaming, please consider encounter and assault in the future. I think it's some of your best gameplay in the game. And before I made this video, I ran a quick poll 51 minutes ago asking, do you have assault in World of Tanks enabled or disabled? And 55% of my audience say that it is enabled. So that is a big deal, boys and girls. And please let me know in the comments down below whether the fact that they are disabling encounter and assault from this testing means that you have no interest in testing it. And let me tell you, if you are on EU1 and you're not getting assault and encounter games, then switch to EU2 to be able to enjoy them. There's a reason why we have checkboxes in the game Wargaming, and that's so that we can enable and disable game modes depending on our preferences. The fact that then you're taking those checkboxes away from us on a server but not telling us when the tests are going to happen means that now I'm not going to be able to choose to play on the EU1 server if I want to have the variety of gameplay that enhances the game. And furthermore, I have better ping on EU1 server. I get way more consistency on EU1 server. So that's unfortunate as well for me, and it'll be unfortunate for a lot of players who get better ping on the EU1 server, but also want to enjoy the variety. The final comment, our primary goal in testing is to ensure that proposed improvements enhance battle quality and guarantee the stability of all matchmaking subsystems. The process will certainly take time, but once we are confident that testing objectives have been met, we will strive to implement these changes permanently as quickly as possible. Let me just run down this list. Do I think that this is going to create more balanced battles? Yes. I think undoubtedly it will create more balanced battles. There's no doubt it will increase the balance. However, engagement and battle variety, will this create more variety and diverse battle setups? No, it definitely won't. It's going to massively reduce the variety of World of Tanks. There will be less extreme matchups with lights and tank destroyers. There'll be less +2, -2. The only thing that they will do is they will limit the same vehicles, but I don't think that's going to be like a drop in the ocean of variety that we're going to lose from the matchmaker enhancements. And I also think this is going to come at the cost of speed and efficiency. I think this will increase the queue times. I can't see how they can manage to employ these matchmaker changes without increasing the queue times. But maybe what they're going to do is have new improved hardware or efficiency inside their matchmaker to change the way that the queue times feel. But if they're not improving their hardware and they're not improving their coding, then I can't see how they can be able to achieve these goals without also affecting the amount of time that players queue. So matchmaking 2.0. Do I think that all in all it's going to be a positive to the game? It's not. If Wargaming had known that there could have been changes that they could have made that would have made an overall positive to the game, then they would already have made them. These are changes that are going to make minor improvements to very small variety of battles, but it's going to come at the expense, I think, of longer queues and a huge amount of the variety and the fun that's stripped from World of Tanks. And I'd like to also mention something very important here as well, and that is, what about preferential matchmaking premiums? Wargaming, you sold us preferential matchmaking tanks over the years because they met tier 10 tank. Well, they didn't meet tier 10 tanks, and they met tier 6 and tier 7s more often. That's not going to be the case anymore. Wargaming are going to reduce the frequency of +2, -2 battles, which the KV5 can't meet +2 anyway, by increasing the amount of +1 and +0s, which is not a good matchup for a KV5. The KV5 is meant to be top tier against 7s or top tier against 6s. There's a reason why it's worse in that regard. So what is Wargaming going to do? Are they going to buff every single preferential matchmaking tank? That would be something, right? If they buff every single preferential matchmaking tank, it's just going to be another power creep inside the game, right? And that would be a task for them to buff every single preferential matchmaking tank so they're as competitive as regular vehicles. So there are lots of issues that Wargaming are creating, and frankly, they're creating the problems. They created the problems with the DBV-152 and the FV-215B-183. Why in hell's name did they sell that tank inside the Bond store so soon after the DBV? I don't... Honestly, for me, let's say that on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is this is horrendous for the game, and 10 this is absolutely amazing for the game, and 5 is that it's the same... How would I rate this? So for balanced battles, I'd probably give it a 7. Engagement and battle variety, I'd give it a 3. It reduces the variety significantly. For speed and efficiency, probably a 4. I can't imagine that it's going to speed up the matchmaker. I think it's going to slow down the matchmaker. So overall for me, I think this is a neutral change, if not actually a slight worsening of the game, especially if Wargaming have grand plans that they want to disable encounter, assault, and grand battles forever. This is immensely alarming for me, and I think it should be immensely alarming for players who enjoy assault, have it enabled, choose to play it, that Wargaming are making the future of assault, encounter, and grand battles uncertain. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was my opinion on Matchmaker 2.0. I would love to have a good conversation in the comments down below with all of you. So leave your comments. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And I look forward to hopefully seeing what Matchmaker 2.0 is going to bring in my limited time that I will play it, because I don't get to play my favorite game mode, Assault.